Radio. This is the Paul Finebaum Show. And now, Paul Finebaum.
No, it is not Paul Finebaum. It is Booger and Burns in again for the king of Sports Talk Radio, Paul Finebaum. I am Peter Burns from the SEC Network, one of the studio anchors here, and Booger McFarland, two-time Super Bowl champ, LSU legend, and aspiring senior PGA Tour golfer, riding shotgun with me. We're having some fun, Boog. Yeah, you enjoy it today? Good times?
Listen, it's always, especially, listen, you get a chance to talk to Pat Dooley. You get a chance to talk about Steve Spurrier. You know, you get a hi-ya, and you get a well in the same show. Come on, man.
Hey, it is a good time, and a lot of it has to do with you guys as well, too. Y'all been great. The hashtag we're using here for the Finebaum Show today is College Football Bold Predictions. So CFB Bold Predictions. Booger, remind everyone in this great listening audience what you said of your bold prediction to kick us off today.
That Tennessee was going to win the East and play for the SEC championship. And whether that's going against Auburn, whether that's going against Alabama or LSU or whoever wins the West, I'm pretty sure. I think Tennessee is going to be the representative from the Eastern Division.
Then on the other side of it, I said yesterday on this very program that I believed, looking at Bama having some question marks in some of their position groups and just a absolutely brutal schedule, I said that they would go 8-4, and that may or may not have been the topic of some discussion today. Let's go back to the phone lines. Brooks, thanks for joining the Paul Finebaum Show.
Hey, thanks for taking my call, fellas. Yeah, Burns, don't let the Bama fans get you down too much, man, because this is the SEC network, this ain't the Alabama network. So, you know, I mean, you have a right to say that. And actually, I'm not saying I think they're going to lose 5 games, but they could easily lose 3 or 4. It could easily happen. And I'll tell you this: if that does happen, I believe that will signify the end of Bama's reign, you know what I'm saying? Because once a legendary coach builds a program up to championship status like Nick Saban has, and he is a legend, I ain't going to deny that. But once he loses that, they would rarely ever get it back to that same championship level, you know what I'm saying? So it would signify the decline of that program.
Brooks, thanks for the phone call. Boog, how hard is that to know that you are the hunted? Because there's no doubt that's what Nick Saban has been ever since. Hell, I even say after he won the championship with LSU in 2003, that he became the hunted, even in when he took over the job with Miami, because everybody wanted to prove that, hey, he wasn't that guy. And the NFL is a different animal, as you know. How hard is that for a program to always have that target on their back?
It's not hard. I mean, which would you rather be, the hammer or the nail? I mean, I want to be the hammer. I don't want to be the nail. Are you kidding me? I want to be the person that's delivering the blow. I want to be the team that's winning. I want to be the team that has the, 4 or 5 straight #1 recruiting classes in a row. Like, people get it really mixed up saying, man, how hard. That's not hard. If you get the best players, you coach them up right, and you instill the right philosophies, and you make them good men, and you make them play and live with good character, you should be able to win a lot of football games. I want to be the person that people are shooting at. People often say, I want to be the guy that's hunting. No, because if you're the guy that's hunting, you know what that means? That means you're not at the top of the mountain. Alabama has been at the top of the mountain for a long time. Now, they've been knocked down a notch or two, and they're trying to fight themselves back up after losing Ohio State. But, Burns, don't ever get it mixed up. I would rather be the hammer than the nail any day of the week.
There's no doubt about it. All right, going back to the phone lines, we'll go to CA Bulldog, I guess California Bulldog. What's happening?
Thank you, gentlemen. It's my 3rd time calling the show. I'm getting sick and tired of these Alabama fans calling and crying. Yeah, they have a storied history, but stop living in the past. And as a Bulldog fan, mark October 3rd as the date that my Georgia Bulldogs are going to kick Bama's ass when Nick Chubb cements his Heisman candidacy. Yeah, I said it. By running for over 200 yards against that vaunted Bama defense.
Who's going to be the quarterback, though, big guy?
Oh, we're gonna go with the transfer from Lambert, from the transfer from Virginia. All you gotta do is hand off the rock, dog. We got Sony Michel backing up Chubb, and I think the fact that Ezekiel Elliott, ran roughshod in the bowl game last year on Bama. I think Chubb, who I think is better than Elliott, is going to run wild. Plus, we're at the house. This is going to be Mark Richt's signature win. It's going to be payback from 2008 when we had no Sean Marino and Matthew Stafford. So mark it down. So California Bulldogs said Georgia is going to beat Bama 38-14, And in the SEC title game, Booger, I love you, baby. You played at LSU, but I think Georgia's coming out the East. I know we got to play Neyland Stadium, Tennessee and Neyland Stadium the week after the Bama win, but I think we can do it without running game and skill people. We got 4/5 of our offense. 38-14, baby. I said it. Yeah, I said it. We're going to rout Bama. Okay?
Listen, CA Bulldog, listen, I love you, man, but here's what I'm going to say to you. Georgia has an awesome set of linebackers. You got Trent Thompson coming in the second, in the defensive front. In the secondary, you're going to have playmakers. Jeremy Pruitt is going to have a great defense. We know about Nick Chubb. Wait, who does this sound like? It sounds like LSU with no quarterback.
Wait, you know what it does? It also sounds like Alabama. It sounds like a bunch of teams. I mean, they're right now in the SEC.
At some point, I understand Nick Chubb is great. So is Leonard Fournette. Okay? Both of those are two of the great sophomore backs in America. But you're going to have to throw the football at some point. Who's going to be the quarterback at Georgia? Who's going to be the quarterback at LSU? Who's going to be the quarterback at Auburn? It's amazing how this conference has so much NFL talent at every position on all these different teams except the most important position, CA Bulldog.
You're looking at it 2 years ago, there were, I believe, 9 different quarterbacks that made it to SEC Media Days. 9 of the universities said, you know what, we've got a quarterback that we want on the podium in front of all of us media, in front of all of you fans, in front of all the television cameras, because that's our leader. You know how many we had last year, Boog? 4.
4? That's what I thought.
You know how many we're going to have this year?
5, right? Yeah.
5, exactly. You nailed it. 5 guys out of 14 schools. There's only 5 of them right now that they feel comfortable that this is our guy. That this is our guy. It's Matty Mock at Missouri. You got Dak Prescott. Who else am I missing out of this whole crew?
That's going to come to Media Days. Josh Dobbs is coming.
And, of course, Josh Dobbs.
And Josh, Dak, Matty Mock. What other quarterback are we missing right off the top? I can't.
I'll get the list. I got the list over here. But, I mean, it's just amazing.
Brandon Allen.
Brandon Allen, and then Jeremy Johnson. You've got only 5 right now. That's amazing to me of what the difference. That Georgia-Alabama game, are we going to see 20 passes in the entire game? That might be an hour and 45-minute game. They might just have a running clock for that entire game.
Well, and think about this along those same lines, Burns. Whichever school can develop their young quarterback the quickest and the best has the ultimate opportunity to win. That's why I'm picking Tennessee in the East, okay? Because I think Josh Dobbs, based on what he did last year, is going to roll over to this year, and I think his development is going to far outperform and outweigh some of the other guys. That's why I think Tennessee, because what they lack on the offensive line and what they may lack in some of the other places, experience and depth, they're going to make up because their signal caller who touches the ball every single play is the most dynamic guy in this conference.
Back to the phone lines we go, 855-242. Paul's where we find Will in Gulfport. Welcome to the Paul Finebaum Show, Will.
Brother and Burns, you guys are really hitting your stride today. I like it.
Hey, appreciate it, man. Have some fun.
Yeah, man. Booger's got some good points, but it doesn't matter if it comes out of the East, whoever wins the West, which I think LSU will. It don't matter if it comes out of the East. They lose every time. So
why is that, Will? Why are you picking LSU, Will?
Well, because I just think Harris, we know it's not physical, it's the mental thing. I think he's going to click because of Jennings doing that stupid thing he did. Sometimes when you put your guy, they don't thrive, but when you kind of give them the keys, then they thrive. I think that's what's going to happen with Harris. You know what I'm saying?
Boog, do you get that feeling? Because you had an opportunity to get down there, and I get down there to Baton Rouge quite a bit. What's the feeling among that LSU squad in that offense right now of what's going to transpire in the quarterback situation?
The feeling is Brandon Harris is the better player, he's the better thrower, but he's probably also the most immature. And so if you get him on the field and you get the right play call in his hands, and he has the opportunity to drop back and just let it go, there's no doubt about it. He's got the best arm talent on the team. But what Anthony Jennings does is he just line up And what he lacks maybe in playmaking ability, he makes up because he's just a gutsy performer. I mean, he just goes out, no matter if he throws 3 picks or has 2 fumbles, he just keeps coming at you. And I don't think he gets enough credit for doing that. Now, with that being said, LSU can't have situations this year where they run the football 75% of the time during a game. You can't do that in SEC play. You can do that against Sam Houston State. But the threat of the forward pass has to be there. Otherwise, Leonard Fournette is going to face loaded boxes. And when he's the type of guy that you want in open space. You want to get Leonard Fournette at the safety level. And right now, LSU is having a hard time doing that. He's having to carry the football 30, 40 times a game to get to that level. Whereas if you look at Nick Chubb last year, Nick Chubb got a chance to go against 2 safeties back because they couldn't put 8 and 9 guys against in the box against Chubb, and he was able to get loose. Fournette should have the same capability this year if LSU can throw the football.
But it's the same condition and issues that Alabama's going to face with their quarterback issues, the same thing that Georgia's going to face, and the same thing as the LSU. Let's go one more phone call. Bob in Alabama. Welcome to the Paul Finebaum Show.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
Got it.
Hey, Book, I want to know, have you been able to get our man woke up from that beatdown he took from Larry a few minutes ago?
Hey, I'm going to check on him and see how he's doing.
Hey, wanted to respond. I think the guy that called in and said that Alabama could easily lose 4 or 5 football games, either he's biased against Alabama or he's just a novice as it comes to football knowledge. Even Vegas says the over and under on Alabama's 10.5 games. Alabama's the second highest odds to win the national championship this year. Saban hadn't lost more than 3 games in a year since 2007, his first year at Alabama. So I think it's foolish to think that. It's wishful thinking. Alabama is going to have a LSU/Alabama 2011 type defense this year. There is a question at quarterback, but, under Saban, even at LSU, you never really had to have a playmaker quarterback. He prefers that the game manager type player. So, I think, that, at worst, Alabama will go 10-2, likely go 11-1 or undefeated. And, the big game for Alabama this year is LSU at home, Georgia on the road, and of course Auburn on the road. But I think they'll probably win 2 out of those 3 and represent the West in Atlanta. One other thing I'd also like to say that I think, one big question for Alabama is how do they replace Amari Cooper? I think Robert Foster, a 5-star athlete from Pennsylvania who's 6'4", 210, and very fast and runs good routes, will do a good job and probably get someone there with 75 catches for 1,000 yards and double-digit touchdowns. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Bob. I tell you what, the one thing I also want to see, you're talking about Reuben Foster, but they got to get O.J. Howard involved in this offense, don't they? I mean, this kid looks exactly like this Julius Thomas type Antonio Gates tight end that looks like he could just run roughshod over linebackers all day long and on some of these patterns, but they just don't traditionally utilize O.J. Howard in the tight end spot there in Alabama.
Well, it's been one of the knocks last year and maybe in the last couple of years. I mean, here's O.J. Howard. Since he got to Alabama, he has been a stud, but the lack of use of him has been puzzling. And, when you look at last year where Amari Cooper got targeted right at 70% of the time, how come some of those targets couldn't go to O.J. Howard? I mean, he is a matchup nightmare. He's a guy that you can put him at the attached tight end position, or you can flank him out and make a linebacker or safety cover man. It is a mismatch waiting to happen. So hopefully Lane Kiffin, I know he was great last year, but if you're looking for a way that Lane Kiffin can improve, figure out a way to get O.J. Howard the football in space. Whoever's quarterbacking, it'll help them. You often hear, Burns, a quarterback's best friend is the tight end.
855-242-7285. That is the voice of Big Booger McFarland. Follow him on Twitter at SEC Booger. You can follow me on Twitter at Peter Burns, ESPN. More of your phone calls coming up next. Booger and Burns in on the Paul Finebaum Show.
This is a...
Finebaum Show. Booger and Burns on parade. Right there, a little Rage Against the Machine coming back. 855-242-7285. You can also 855-242-PAUL. It's only actually P-A-U-L, not with the proper 5 A's and the W's that you actually should go ahead and use. All right, but as always, a good guest here on the Paul Finebaum Show. Rick Horrow of Horrow Sports Ventures joins us right now on the Paul Finebaum Show. Rick, it's been a while, man. I don't think you and I have talked in about 10 years when I was doing radio back in San Antonio, Texas, out of Ticket 760. What's happening, man?
I do remember that. You've had a long and illustrious career, and, you have a all-world football player next to you. And where's Finebaum today?
Paul is probably at the gym twerking or something like. What is he doing, Boog? Have we figured out? Have we done the hashtag Where's Paul yet?
I told you he's at a kale farm.
Listen. A kale farm is perfect. What a great line. I got to tell you, the one place you don't expect somebody to look like that to be is near a gym. But I guess maybe you never know. So I'm in Cooperstown. I was actually giving a speech today. So I just finished touring the Hall of Fame, and I know that's not the issue on today's agenda. But who says Pete Rose is not in the Hall of Fame? He's in the exhibit about the most hits. He's in the exhibit about the Big Red Machine. He's in the exhibit about the Phillies with Mike Schmidt, etc. So I don't get it. I know he's not supposed to be in as a person, but he's signed a lot of stuff in the cases of the Hall of Fame. Did you guys know that?
I knew that he was mentioned, yet Pete Rose was not admitted. I knew that they don't completely gloss over his illustrious career, obviously, with the Reds and what he did, the hit machine himself, Rick. But and it goes back to say about how much gambling do you think has gone on with players over the years that no one ever really kind of sniffed into or it came out into the public light, such as what happened with Pete Rose?
Well, and I interviewed Rob Manfred for some stuff that we did, and he's a very thoughtful guy. People are going to love him as commissioner, by the way. They just don't know him yet because he only took over in January. And he said he's going to give him a hearing. But as you know, the Outside the Lines report broke about Pete Rose betting on games, not just betting on other stuff. That's a death knell because, it's not just the issues of betting on your team, but what happens if you don't? Does that mean you don't think they're going to play very well that day and, access to people who could influence them. So, and the fact that it's dishonest. So he will get his day with Rob Manfred. I'm just not sure what that day will produce.
Speaking of the money, I mean, this latest deal with EA Sports and all these college players, and, when I first saw it, I'm thinking, man, these guys are about to hit a lick. But I guess when you do the math, it comes out to about $2,500 bucks a person. Do you think that that's a fair settlement for the players?
Well, listen, there are a lot of them. So, how do you do it? Do you say that the guys who blaze the trail should get more? It's kind of like the concussion settlements with the NFL, Booger, as you then define who gets it, because you got a lot of players who are eligible. When you think of one player getting it, it's not going to make a difference, but it is going to get some pain for CLC and for the NCAA. And I think more important is that anything in the future that has a player's likeness on it, and if it has a number 5 and it's a left and it looks like Tim Tebow, you're darn straight the players are going to get some money out of it. And then when you add that to the fact that the guaranteed scholarship rules and how about the Big 5 power conferences recruiting based on, in the future, how much money players may get as a stipend, and you realize it's a long way from a couple of years ago, a long way from when you played.
Rick, how close are we to having, the next 2020? We're having a kid that comes out of wherever he plays for one of these SEC schools, being able to sign his own endorsement deal. You see that happening anytime soon?
Well, as a practical matter, the idea of a player who is a Johnny Manziel or in fact, Tebow, maybe is a good example, of kids winning the Heisman early and therefore playing in college as superstars. Usually the guys are up and out. And I think it's going to be hard for a player to worry about that year of playing for Texas or for a team after he's won the Heisman and not worrying about getting a lucrative endorsement career after he gets out. Now, Reggie Bush did it right after he signed, and there are other guys that did it right after he signed. So, we may not be a long way away from that. I just don't know it's going to affect a lot of athletes.
Do you think that that's a fair way to do it, though, when you talk about, the Power 5 conferences, specifically the SEC, when you have people are often worried that if you start paying guys, then guys are just going to go to the highest bidder. Do you think that there's a fair way to do it?
Well, let's put it this way. It's college kids who decide what biology program they want to go into when they have a choice because they tested high and they're brilliant. They have an ability to be bought by the highest bidder. I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about the amenities. So if you put it in that context, I'm all for giving leverage to the kids. Is it fair to create a bidding war where a kid who has the ability to go to any schools goes to the school who gives them the biggest stipend? No, I think that's not fair. But I do think it's much better than what we had years ago, which is not recognizing that these kids deserve any additional dollars at all.
Then it's the $100 handshakes, and then, in the world of
that stuff. I said a year ago that the prior autograph stuff and the ineligibility of Ohio State and all of those dollars, the Todd Gurley stuff, I know this sounds like it's silly, but 5 years from now we're going to look back on that and say, man, that was small potatoes and that really wasn't fair. And hopefully we're moving in that direction.
He's a soothsayer. He is Rick Horrow from Horrow Sports Ventures. Rick, we'll go look for Paul Finebaum while he's kale farming, okay?
Yeah, look at kale farming and look in the gym and tell him we'll talk next week.
We'll do it, Rick. Thanks for joining us, man. There he is, Rick Horrow, Horrow Sports Ventures. Booger, that leads me to something. We're going to go to break here, but I want you to think about this, and don't answer it right now. But Rick was just talking about guys gambling, and we're talking about the money that flows. And I always wondered about this, and I want to hear from you guys at 855-242-PAUL. Do you bet on your team? And if you do, are you a bad sports fan if you bet against your team? Those phone calls coming up next. It is Booger and Burns, Peter Burns and Booger McFarland in on the Paul Finebaum Show.
Investing in bonds.
Welcome back to the Paul Finebaum Show. Booger and Burns in yet once again all week long. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, as we've decided that Paul Finebaum is out kale farming. Don't joke about kale farming. That's a legit deal. It's a side business for him, so he makes really good money.
No, it's not about the money.
Kale farms.
It's not about the money you make. It's about all the kale that he farms so he can eat it. Because
that is true.
Paul hadn't gained a pound in probably 10 years, dude.
He's a $115 so cool. My favorite is when it's him and Marcus, and anytime right around October, late October, early November, when they're doing SEC Nation on the SEC Network, and that you can just tell it's cold. And Paul is just knee-knocking. I mean, he's got like 4 fur coats on, Joe Namath, Willie Davis style, just doing it. Willie Beeman style, just got the whole fur coat action going because he's freezing. We got to put some meat on his bones, Booger. Got to put some meat on his bones.
Stop eating kale and start eating cheeseburgers. That's my remedy.
We could do that. Hey, I asked a question right before the break as a tease, what we do in the radio industry, about if you gamble on games, legally, of course. We do nothing illegal. None of you listeners or nor me or Booger never have done anything illegal. But talking about when you go to Vegas and you place a bet on your team, which now some of the Bovada odds have come out. Alabama 7-4 to win the national championship. Auburn 3-1. Georgia 4-1. LSU 11-2. Does it make you a bad fan if you go to Vegas legally and place a bet against your team? If you're there for the weekend. Now, Booger, you can't really answer that because, once again, you have zero vices. You don't drink and you don't gamble. So I would assume you have no saying into this, correct?
Well, I gamble. I just don't bet on games. I mean, I love blackjack now. Blackjack is like it's peanut butter, cheeseburgers, and blackjack. Those are my 3 things, But as far as betting on games, PB, I just don't do it. But if somebody does bet on games, how do you bet against your own team? How do you bet against, like, if you're an LSU fan or if you're an Ole Miss fan, how are you betting against your team?
I do it all the time. If I'm a diehard Spurs fan. I grew up there. I played college golf out there. And I will bet against the Spurs anytime I get a chance. Because you know why? I figure when I'm in Vegas, I hedge my feelings. And I think that doesn't make me less of a sports fan. I go ahead and say, guess what? If my team, whoever team you pick, but if my team is going to lose, I'm going to be monetarily compensated. It's a hedge. I don't think that makes me a bad fan at all.
So basically what you're saying, if your team wins, you feel great, you just lose money. If your team loses, you feel awful, but you win money.
Right.
It's not the smartest thing ever.
It's not the dumbest thing I've ever said. I think we've known that over the last couple of days. All right, Chase is in here on the Paul Finebaum Show. What's going on, Chase?
Hey, guys. How you doing? First-time caller.
What's up?
Happy to be on here. I wanted to comment one thing real quick about the gambling. I'm a diehard Florida State fan. I'm a diehard Jaguar fan. It's harder being a Jaguar fan, but I have learned not to bet on my teams because it never fails. It never turns out good. So I've given up on that. I just don't
but
even...
Would you bet, but Chase, would you bet against your team? Let's say that you're a diehard Jacksonville Jaguars fan. Why not?
Absolutely. Because, well, if it turns out and they win, I would pay $50 to $100 for my team to win. So if it's going to bring me good fortune to bet against my team, I'll do it just to get the win.
There you go. You're looking at it in the completely wrong direction, my friend. You're basically paying the gambling gods to go ahead and do you a solid.
I've been too scared to try that theory yet, but maybe someday I will. And I just real quick, I just want to say something to poke the hornet's nest because I'm a Florida State fan, and I'm sure people are going to come barreling in after me with phone calls. But when is the SEC going to get off this high horse? You got swept by the ACC. The entire SEC East Division was swept by the ACC. Nobody's scared to come into Georgia and play Georgia, okay? LSU has gotten beat by Clemson in the bowl game a couple years ago. Clemson whooped South Carolina. Louisville whipped Kentucky, which I know Kentucky and Florida are jokes. But seriously, quit making it sound like it's scary to come and play an SEC team because you haven't done anything.
Oh, no. Oh, goodness gracious. I accidentally hit the hang-up button. I'm still getting used to this thing over here, Booger. The call screener deal.
Right.
I accidentally hit the hang-up. I was trying to bump his volume up louder.
Well,
isn't that unfortunate?
To his point, the SEC did have a pretty bad bowl season. I think we all can admit that. Some would say it's because the teams aren't motivated. Some will say the SEC only wants to play for national championships, and certain bowls or even the bowl season in general doesn't matter. Here's what I would say about the SEC in general. I think the track record speaks for itself. I think the era of invincibility may or may not have passed. Okay, I think the mindset across the country is it's a pretty level playing field when you start talking the Power 5 conferences, and I would agree with that. The difference between the SEC and the rest of the country, to me, has always been the defensive line. And this year, you're talking Alabama may have the best defensive line in the country. Missouri's always had a very, very good defensive line. The inside tackles at LSU this year are going to be dominant. Auburn, when you start talking about Carl Lawson coming back, Montravius Adams. So the defensive lines are always where the SEC defenses have set themselves apart, and I think we're going to get back to that this year. Now, the rest of the country has always had great skill players. They've always had skill position players everywhere, but it's the defensive line, the guys that are 6'2", 6'3", 290 that can run.
How important right now is that defensive line, the trenches that you're talking about? How important is that still with when you go out there and you're going to be facing an Oregon, you're going to be facing an Ohio State team, you're going to be facing a team that likes the read option, that a little bit more of the spread option offense. How much is that being diminished in the way that college coaches across the country are changing their game right now? Because it's no longer a 3 yards in a cloud of dust college football game that we probably saw maybe a decade ago.
It's not 3 yards in a cloud of dust. What it is, it's window dressing. I'm going to show you a lot of different curtains on the window before I raise it up and try to run it down your throat. Okay, the zone read and the spread option. Pete, all that is window dressing. Auburn still runs zone plays. They still run power runs. They still run what we call gap runs. They just have different variations and different ways how to get to it. Football is football. It's still blocking and tackling and throwing and catching, and you still have to have. There's a reason that when you look at Alabama and when you start talking about Ashawn Robinson and you start talking about Deshaun Hand and Jonathan Allen and Jared Reed and all the guys that they have up there, there's a reason why people are saying that's the best defensive line in the country, because regardless of what plays you run, they will be up to the task. And so I hear you when you talk about the variation of the offenses, but it's still football, okay? You can try to get me tired, but at some point you have to block me.
Well, and unfortunately, we saw what Ohio State was able to do against Alabama in that comeback. By the way, some breaking news, too, that came out. Braxton Miller has said that he will return. Not that this is a shock because it's been reported 500 times, but he confirmed that he expects to go out back to Ohio State and expects to play quarterback. We'll head out to Columbus and check in with Selena. Selena, welcome to the Paul Finebaum program.
Hey there. How are y'all doing today? Sounds like you're having fun.
Oh, man, it's sports radio. It could be a whole lot worse things to do in life, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I got a few things to talk about today. First off, diehard Tennessee Volunteers fan, I never bet a game Tennessee plays. Never. I will handshake bet on any other football game in the country, but I will never bet a Tennessee Volunteers game.
Not even like if a friend wants to do, hey, is this a friendly dinner? Selena, you and me at the steakhouse of your choice, my team versus your team. You won't even handshake deal or something like that?
Nope, I won't, because I don't need my prodigious powers of football mojo compromised by something as meaningless as money.
Wow, that may be the smartest thing I've ever heard in the history of the Paul Finebaum Show, Boog.
Oh, now, surely not.
Selena, before we let you go, let me ask you, what are you going to see out of your Vols this year?
I am kind of up in the air right now. Honestly, I think that worst case scenario, unless, we lose, I don't know, Josh Dobbs and the entire defensive secondary, I think worst case scenario is 8-4. But I think that the potential is there for us to beat a couple of teams that perhaps we would normally not be considered to beat. We have a few trouble clients that I'm worried about. The offensive line is a year older and a year better, and it couldn't help but be better after what it was last year. Only got the 2 running backs, although the recent transfer from Cincinnati is a good ad. And still worried about the middle linebacker position. But, in the SEC, there's always some element that elevates a team unexpectedly. And I think that this year in the SEC, it's going to be quarterback play because there are so many great teams with outstanding talent who are looking for a game manager. And if you have a quarterback who can really elevate the focus of the offense, I think that's going to make the difference in some of these big, rivalry games. So I don't think that 10-2 is out of the question.
Hey, Selena, you're dead on with what we had earlier, and we were talking about the difference in, when you go ahead and talk about the absolute SEC bowl prediction, and that's exactly what you talked about earlier, right, Boog? It was the quarterback and the play of Josh Dobbs that makes you think that they're going to win the East.
Because of what I saw from him last year and where I think he's headed this year. And also, let's not forget, when you look at the wide receiver position, he's got a lot of talent there. Defensive line, you got Barnett, Kurt Magid. Tennessee is poised for a very, very deep run in the conference this year.
All right, 855-242-7285. More of those bold predictions. We'll also talk about some of the indecision in modern recruiting. We saw it with DeAndre Jordan in basketball, but how it rears its head each and every year comes signing day. We'll talk to Mike Farrell, Rivals.com National Recruiting Director. Coming up next, it's Booger and Burns, Peter Burns, Boog McFarland in on the Paul Finebaum Show.
This is a...
Welcome back to the Paul Finebaum Show. Booger and Burns in once again for the great and mighty Paul Finebaum. Peter Burns, SEC Network studio anchor, and Booger McFarland, two-time Super Bowl champion, LSU legend, and college football analyst for us throughout the year. As we get closer and closer, we will both be traveling. In fact, all of us as SEC Network will be live in your face from SEC Media Days, the first year that we will be there in its entirety, because it's the first year. Last year we launched August 14th, so make sure you tune in pretty much for every day from, my gosh, it seems like 24 hours a day. We will have coverage coming from every single head coach and all the players on the coverage from SEC Media Days, and get ready to pop off and have a good one. Mike Farrell, Rivals.com, National Recruiting Director, joins us now on the Paul Finebaum Show. And it seems, Paul, Mike, we've been discussing the DeAndre Jordan story a little bit today, who is the power forward for the Los Angeles Clippers, who had decided he was going to play for Dallas, then went back and changed his mind after giving a verbal commitment, and then now left Mark Cuban kind of crying as the Clippers go ahead and re-sign him. But I guess that's all in the day for SEC coaches on National Signing Day, isn't it?
Yeah, that's every day, and I would say the months of December, January, and February every year for every conference in high school football recruiting, at least for the last 5 or 6 years. So it's interesting to see it play out, on a professional stage where you're weighing money, you're weighing winning a championship, but you're also got a deadline, a free agency deadline, and to see somebody handle it where Mark Cuban came out and said, that he ignored calls and texts and was not in contact throughout the day. And, Doc Rivers and his group got the last crack at DeAndre Jordan. I've seen this in high school, where the last visit is the one that ends up getting the kid on the week before signing day, or, he stops communicating with the school that he's already committed to. It's very familiar to me.
Isn't that the way recruiting kind of supposed to be, though? I mean, if you got a guy who commits, especially now, guys are committing a year early, don't you have to kind of continue to recruit the guys that have already committed just as hard as you recruit the ones that you don't have?
You do now. You never used to. 10, 15 years ago, when I started covering recruiting, it really wasn't a necessity. Coaches kind of took it for granted. Your kid committed, you held them to their word, and you could focus on the other kids. But, I think when recruiting started to become a little bit more mainstream, started getting a little bit more coverage on national television, and, obviously with the websites like Rivals.com, paying attention to the process, I think kids started to see that they were the ones in power, and they did not want to be taken for granted. So recruiting truly became, if you committed to a school, that's the school that led for you up until signing day. And nowadays, I think, the word commitment is really, I haven't found a replacement for it. We call it a verbal commitment because it's obviously, non-binding until they sign. But there's got to be another word for it, a pledge. It's really not a true commitment when you look at some of these decisions.
It's like giving a girl a promise ring in middle school, right? Like you promise that you're going to marry her, but you got to know it's probably not going to go down that way.
Well, the funniest part about it these days, and I often do, listen, I'm 45 years old, I've been married for 18 years, and, I often do refer to that. When I ask kids, okay, you're committed to such and such a school, how committed are you? Oh, I'm 110% committed, sir. Well, okay, great. But I'm going to visit, Florida, Georgia, USC, and Auburn. Well, no. See, you can't do that if you're 110% committed, because if I start dating other women, my wife's not going to really be thrilled with that. But, 17, 16-year-old kids don't understand that level of commitment. So it's interesting to hear them say that. So I now say, okay, you're committed, but you're going to take other visits. You cannot be 100% committed. So what percentage are you? And guess what the answer is? 100% of the time, what is the answer?
Well, Mike, it's one of those things that we're trying to figure out what happens and what's the future of college recruiting. We're going to talk about that on the other side. He's Mike Farrell of Rivals.com, National Recruiting Director. We appreciate the time. And on the other side that we're going to come back, Boog and I got to get into your recruiting story because there's a shocking revelation you're going to make on the other side. That coming up, Booger and Burns in on the Paul Finebaum Show.
Is this a tease? Geico presents Strange Saving Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
And now, for Geico's edition of Stuff Found in Your Car, we go inside your side door pocket.
Hello, yes, the crumpled receipt with gum in it. From your anniversary dinner, you sprang for expensive wine, your server was Beth. That dinner was a couple $100. Money you could get back if you switched to Geico and saved hundreds of dollars on your car insurance. I bet you'd save that receipt, frame it even. But really, where did I go wrong? Was it the corkage fee?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com today.